Since the Ravens lost on Sunday, we have officially switched over to the off-season part of our coverage. Thanks so much for tuning in, everybody. Welcome into the Ravens Rundown. And on today's show, we're going to look at who Mel Kiper Jr. has the Baltimore Ravens choosing in the first round of the 2025 NFL Draft. I want you guys to show me, though, by hitting that thumbs up button, if you want the Ravens to make a splash in the first round. You might be like me. You might be like me and think, you know what? I want them to make just a big move. Pick somebody with a super high ceiling, maybe make a trade. I don't know. If you want Baltimore to make a splash, do me a favor, like the video. So before we go into any draft content and reveal who Mel Kiper has Baltimore picking, let's talk about the team needs from my perspective. Okay, I think number one need for this team is an edge rusher. And I think number two, you got to look at that secondary. Number three is the offensive line. However, if you re-sign Ronnie Stanley, that might change to just interior offensive line. But right now, with his status with Baltimore, kind of still hanging in the balance, edge, secondary, offensive line, those are the three in that order for me. So Mel Kiper, who's he got? Siobhan Revel Jr., cornerback out of East Carolina. If you don't know the name, you're going to, because I think this guy's going to be a star in the NFL. Mel Kiper Jr. agrees. This is what he had to say. Teams will be watching Revel's medicals as he recovers from a torn ACL that ended his 2024 season in September. He has tremendous size at 6'3" and leans on his strong instincts to make plays. Revel, who would be the first Eastern Carolina first rounder since Chris Johnson in 2008, had 2 interceptions in 3 games, including a pick 6. Now picture Revel in the Baltimore secondary with Marlon Humphrey, Nate Wiggins, and Kyle Hamilton. He could fill free agent Brandon Stevens' void and help limit the big plays that burned the Ravens this season. They allowed 58 completions for 20 or more yards, third most in the National Football League. Let's get into my scouting report for Siobhan Revel Jr. He's got a lot of pros. He's got some cons. Let's start with the pros. He's got crazy arm length. He's got really good size as well, standing at 6'3". He's got long speed. His hips are incredibly fluid. And my favorite thing right here is just that dog mentality. You know, he's one of those guys that won't back down from anybody. He's one of those guys that talks his talk. And he should, because he's so good in man coverage. Very solid press man corner. Let's talk a little bit about the cons. There's those injury concerns, right? Tore his ACL in September, did not play after 3 games with East Carolina. He can get too grabby at times, and sometimes he gets baited. The grade on him, though, still definitely in that first round. Let's take it back to 2023, the last time he actually played a full season in college. He had 55 tackles, 1 sack, 6 pass breakups, and an interception as well. You know what, guys? This is a guy that I am pretty high on, honestly. I think he's going to be awesome in this league, and I think he's going to be a star, whether it's with Baltimore or not. But also at the same time, you got to think about what he went through, and you got to think about the position that he plays. Cornerback is already the hardest position in this game, behind quarterback. And in my opinion, I think you got to wait until after evaluations, okay? I'm going to wait until after evaluations until I tell you exactly 100% how I feel because of the nature of his position, right? If he was an edge rusher, if he was a linebacker, if it was any of those guys and it was a torn ACL, you know what? Guys rehab so well, guys rehab so quick, but it's that position of cornerback where there's so much stop, start, cut, sprint, so many things like that. Things happen on a dime. I'm curious to see where he goes in his rehab process. But if he evaluates well, and if he's believed to be healthy, then man, I'm all game. I think this is a guy that probably would have gone in the top 15 if he hadn't endured that ACL tear, but he did. Okay? So I want you to do something for me in the comment section down below. Grade the pick of Siobhan Revel Jr. in the first round. Give me an A, B, C, D, or F. Coming up, we got my top first-round targets, my top first-round prospects, that if I'm Eric DeCosta, if I'm John Harbaugh, these are two guys that I've got circled. These are two guys that I'm gunning for in the 2025 NFL Draft. But before we get into any of that, I got to give a word from our sponsor. That's our friends over at Prize Picks, and the big game is almost here, and it's now or never. So don't miss out on the last football game of the season with Prize Picks. It's the best place to win cash while watching the big game. Prize Picks is also having a free pick for the big game, where one of the starting quarterbacks only need to throw 1 yard to win. If you're correct on at least one more stat projection, you can win real cash. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need a win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. You can now win up to 1,000 times your money on Prize Picks. Let's take a look at my Prize Picks I've got going into Sunday's NFC Championship game. They talked about that one square where one of the quarterbacks just has to throw half a yard. I'm taking advantage of that. Jayden Daniels, more than half a passing yard. And then I got Terry McLaurin, A.J. Brown, each more than half a receiving touchdown. I think both of those guys find the end zone on Sunday. So you can tail my picks. You can fade my picks. Just make sure you do have Prize Picks. So download the Prize Picks app today. Use code CLNS and get $50 instantly when you play just $5. That's code CLNS on Prize Picks. Get $50 instantly when you play just $5. You don't even need a win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. The link to this promo is in the comments and description of today's video. Prize Picks, run your game. Coming up now, we've got my top prospects who I think Baltimore should be looking at. And I want to give a little bit of a refresher, okay, before we get into any of these. These are my highest team needs. Edge rusher, secondary, offensive line. We talked a couple days ago about, sure, the edge rushers look good in the sack totals, but in the actual getting to the quarterback and pressuring the quarterback and getting in the quarterback's grill, they were one of the worst in the country. And you know who was really good at hurrying the quarterback, putting pressure on the quarterback? James Petersen Jr., okay? He's my number one favorite prospect of a guy who I think realistically can fall to that number 27 spot. Mel Kiper Jr. actually had him being taken by Buffalo right after Baltimore at pick 28. Let's look at what he did in 2024. 38 tackles, 7.5 sacks, 4 hits, and this is the main thing. Those 43 quarterback hurries, okay? So let's talk about scouting report. His measurements are off the chart, 6'5", 243 pounds, and is only 21 years old. He definitely could put a little bit more weight on, and that's going to be one of my cons on the bottom. Smaller frame definitely impacts his ability to set the edge. But what he does is he dominates with incredible speed and explosive get off. You are not going to find a guy in this draft that is quicker off the ball than James Petersen Jr., okay? And that's why I think JPJ has an incredibly high ceiling, but also has the potential to be a bust. So I think it would be a little bit of a risk, but because of his athleticism, because of his side, his speed, I think he's willing to take that shot. I think this team should be willing to take that shot late in that first round for a guy who has a chance to be an all-pro pass rusher, okay? I want you guys to join our family right here on Ravens Rundown for more NFL content, for more off-season content. We're only getting started right here on Ravens Rundown, so make sure you guys hit that sub button. My number 2, my second favorite prospect, Benjamin Morrison, cornerback out of the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, and he's a guy who I want to give a disclaimer about. A little bit like Siobhan, he has not played the entirety of this season, but his was since December 12th, okay? So he did get to play a good bit more into this year, but he did miss 6 games with the Fighting Irish in totality. Here's what Mel Kiper Jr. had to say about Benjamin Morrison. He said, Morrison missed all but 6 games in 2024 with a hip injury, but he's a top-tier cover man. He has sound technique and ball skills. Morrison had 9 picks and 21 pass breakups over his career. And what I love about Morrison is he's a guy that you can kind of put all over. Now, these numbers aren't as big and they don't go all over the place as Kyle Hamilton's. That's a true jack of all trades. But you can see his slot alignments by snaps, right? 4 at the D-line, 22 at the slot position, 272 at corner, 15 in the box, and 1 deep. He definitely is skilled in that man-press corner zone, and is definitely a guy that Notre Dame wishes they had in that final game against Ohio State, because he would have been the guy that was on Jeremiah Smith. He would have been the guy that's charged with taking Emeka Emeka Egbuka out of the game. And I think he can be our guy sometime in the near future, okay? I have zero doubt in my mind that if the Ravens, that they have to go corner or edge in the first round of this draft. Okay, what we saw from the secondary, what we saw from Brandon Stephens, plain and simple, was not good enough. Okay, what we saw from this pass rush in the playoff game against the Buffalo Bills, plain and simple, was not good enough. And I think either of these two right here, James Pierce Jr. or Benjamin Morrison, can make massive stride for this Ravens defense coming up, okay? You tell me, I told you, now it's your turn. What position do you want the Ravens to draft in 2025? Let me know in the comment section down below. And as always, make sure to hit that sub button.